Today, today we're going to be diving headfirst into a story that, well, it reads like a political thriller, but it's all too real. We're going to be unpacking the aftermath of an alleged arson attack on a political party office in Varna, Bulgaria, an incident that happened just hours after the party leader called out government corruption and even named names on live television. We've got video footage of the damaged office and first-hand accounts from those directly impacted, and they believe this is a chilling attempt to silence dissent in a country grappling with deep-rooted corruption. So let's hit rewind for a second and set the scene. This incident centers around a political party called Velichi, meaning greatness, and its leader, Ivan Mikhailov. So picture this. Mikhailov is participating in a pre-election debate on Panorama, a popular Bulgarian current affairs program kind of like their version of 60 Minutes. Now, during this debate, Mikhailov, no, he didn't mince words. He directly accused specific individuals, naming them on air, alleging they were entangled in corruption, organized crime, and basically operating a mafia-like system in Varna. Now, you might be thinking, that's a bold move, calling out these figures on national TV, and you'd be right. It takes guts, especially if his accusations hold water and these individuals wield the kind of power they're said to have. But here's where it gets really unsettling. Just hours after this explosive television appearance, in the dead of night, one of Velichi's offices in Varna is attacked. And we're not talking about a bit of graffiti here. The video footage we're analyzing paints a stark picture. Broken windows, the office ravaged by fire, documents and campaign materials reduced to ash, the air thick with the stench of smoke. It's the kind of scene that sends shivers down your spine even watching it through a screen. One of the individuals at the scene, clearly shaken, points to the charred remains of the office and says, "This is what happens when you speak out against these people. This is Bulgaria in the 21st century." Swear. Those words, "This is Bulgaria," really struck a nerve with me, because this isn't just about property damage, it's about something far more insidious. The erosion of democratic principles, the silencing of opposition, and the fear that grips a nation when those in power operate above the law. It's easy to watch something like this unfold from a distance, and think, well, that's terrible, but it's happening over there. Couldn't happen here. But here's the thing. The situation in Bulgaria is a chilling reminder that the fight for democracy and against corruption, that's a global one. The same forces, greed, abuse of power, the silencing of dissent, they're at play everywhere. So let's peel back the layers a bit and examine the bigger picture here. What's the context for this alleged attack? What's brewing beneath the surface in Bulgaria? Well, for starters, Bulgaria has been wrestling with corruption for decades. It consistently ranks as one of the most corrupt countries in the European Union, which is pretty mind-blowing when you consider that this isn't some isolated nation. It's a member of the EU, supposed bastion of democracy and the rule of law. What's even more alarming is that this incident isn't an isolated blip on the radar. Sadly, there's a troubling pattern of threats, intimidation, and even violence directed at journalists, activists, and yes, even politicians who dare to challenge the powers that be, who speak out against corruption, who shine a light on the shady dealings happening in the shadows. Think about what that does to a society. If you know that speaking up, doing the right thing could make you a target, could lead to your office, your livelihood, even your safety being compromised, wouldn't you think twice? Wouldn't you be tempted to just keep your head down, stay silent, and hope the storm passes you by? That's the insidious nature of these kinds of attacks. They're not just about the immediate damage, the broken windows and the flames. They're about creating a climate of fear, of self-censorship, where people are too afraid to speak truth to power, to hold those in power accountable. And that's where things start to crumble from the inside out. Because a democracy without a free press, without citizens who feel safe to voice their concerns, without consequences for those who abuse their power, that's not a democracy. It's a facade, a house of cards just waiting for the slightest breeze to send it toppling down. Now, in this particular incident, we see the individuals in the video expressing a deep mistrust of the authorities. They claim they've reached out to the police, to the media, only to be met with silence with indifference. One of them even draws a chilling parallel, saying, "This reminds me of 1939 Germany, when they burned books and businesses and everyone was too afraid to speak up." Now, it's crucial to be careful with historical comparisons, but you can't help but feel the weight of that statement, the sense of despair, and the fear that history might be repeating itself. So you might be asking, What can be done? If you can't trust the authorities, the media, the very institutions that are supposed to protect you, what options are left? And that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? What happens when the system that's supposed to safeguard democracy becomes complicit in its erosion? Well, the individuals in the video, despite their fear and frustration, haven't given up hope. They're taking a page from a playbook that's become increasingly common in our interconnected world. They're appealing for international attention, calling on European and American organizations to shine a spotlight on what's happening in Bulgaria, to hold their government accountable. It's a desperate plea for help, a recognition that sometimes change needs a little push from the outside. But it also begs the question, what can we, as global citizens, do to support these calls for transparency and accountability? How can we ensure that incidents like this don't slip through the cracks, that those responsible are held accountable, and that the fight for democracy, for justice, for world war speaking truth, the power isn't a dangerous act, continues to gain momentum? Those are the questions we'll grapple with as we continue our deep dive. Stick with us. We're back, and as promised, we're gonna delve deeper into what can be done to address the situation in Bulgaria. You know, it's easy to feel overwhelmed, even powerless, when you see these brazen acts of intimidation. But the truth is, apathy is a luxury we can't afford, not when the stakes are this high. So let's talk about concrete actions. Starting with Villici's call for international attention. They're specifically urging European and American organizations to step in. And you might be wondering, what can these organizations realistically do from afar? And it's a valid question. Well, first and foremost, simply acknowledging the incident, condemning the attack in no uncertain terms, that in itself sends a powerful message. It tells those in power that the world is watching. That attempts to silence dissent, to operate with impunity, well, they won't be tolerated. Think of it as shining a giant spotlight on a problem that thrives in darkness. Exposure, accountability. These are powerful weapons against corruption. But beyond condemnation, these international organizations have other tools at their disposal. They can launch independent investigations into these corruption allegations, putting pressure on the Bulgarian government to cooperate. They can impose sanctions on individuals found guilty of wrongdoing, targeting their assets, their ability to travel freely. These might seem like distant consequences, but they can be incredibly effective in changing behavior. And then there's the crucial matter of supporting those who are fighting for change from within Bulgaria. Independent media outlets, investigative journalists, NGOs, working on transparency and good governance. These are the frontline soldiers in the battle against corruption. And they need resources, funding, and often just the knowledge that they're not alone in this fight. Because here's the thing about change. It rarely trickles down from the top. Real lasting change that often starts at the grassroots level. It starts with ordinary people who've had enough, who are willing to stand up and say, no more. And that's what we're seeing in Bulgaria with Vilici, with those individuals who are risking their safety to speak truth to power. They're standing up, not just for themselves, but for the future of their country, for the very principles of democracy that we often take for granted. So, as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a call to action. It's easy to feel overwhelmed by the scale of global challenges, to think that our individual actions are just a drop in the ocean. But it's important to remember that oceans are made up of drops. Every voice raised against injustice, every act of support for those on the front lines, every time we choose courage over complacency, we're contributing to a wave of change. Stay informed, stay engaged, and never underestimate the power of your voice.